Outside on the table, there's some application forms. If you're not a member of the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, I suggest, or I highly recommend. I'm a member. There's a lot of benefits to the fire chiefs being members of the Fire Chiefs Association. Coming to these conferences, coming to the Fire Rescue Conference, you can get some discounts for the tickets themselves, but also just being a part of that association and a lot of the projects that they're working on. If they're looking and need help with some of the events and you find something you're interested in, that's a good way to get yourself involved in that. Chris will also want me to speak to the golf tournament coming up in June.
June 21st,
Spotsylvania County's fundraiser, so if you're into golf, it's a good chance to get out and play some golf with some fire department personnel. And support the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association. So with that, Don Forth, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you take it away.
Thank you. Hear this okay? Yes. Slide it up closer. How about that? Well, first of all, I really appreciate being here. I've come from a long ways away. I'm from Portland, Oregon, the surrounding area there, so I probably get the distance travel award, I suppose. I'll tell you a little bit about my background in just a second, but just to kind of segue from what Meredith was talking about to the issue of youth fire setting, just kind of a funny story about how literal kids can be about things and how messages can sometimes get confused when they're not prepared for them. I was in front of a group of kids one time, and they were probably kindergartners, and we're talking about various things that we wanted them to learn, and one of the things that came up was, what do you do if your clothes catch on fire? And a hand shoots up in the front row, a little guy probably 5 or 6 years old. He's all excited because he's got the answer, and I'm thinking, okay, he knows, and I point to him and I say, what would you do? And he said, I wouldn't put them on. And I think I learned more than he did that day, because what I realized is he was, for once, not just spouting the words back that he expected I wanted to hear, but he was translating them literally as a kindergartner should. Yeah, I wouldn't put on a pile of burning clothes either. So sometimes we have to back up and think about things through the eyes of our audience to understand how they're going to receive it. We've got to take our filter off in order to do that. That's a very important message in dealing with youth fire setting behavior, because now you're boiling it down. You really have an opportunity to be more specific about messaging, because you have a very significant event that's occurred that you're trying to work through. But I don't want to get sidetracked on that and get into the specifics. I very easily could, but that could go on for hours, and I wouldn't want to do that. I really want to talk about collaboration and what that can do for all of us, the diversity of the fire service professionals that are in here, and also link that into the community. So why me? Well, that's a good question. I appreciate the invitation. It's always fun to get out and see places and things. My experience goes back in this particular field. I started in the fire service in 1980 as a volunteer firefighter in the community I lived in just outside of Portland, Oregon. I worked a year for the Salem Fire Department, which is the state capital, and then I was hired in 1984 by Portland Fire and Rescue and worked for the city of Portland for 27 years. During my career there, I actually ended up spending most of it in public education, beginning in 1990. But in 1988, I had the first exposure to our Youth Firesetting intervention program that we had there. We had a tragic quadruple fatality in 1986 set by kids that prompted the creation of our program. And that wasn't by me, that was by my predecessor, who had an excellent background in counseling. He was also one of our firefighters, but developed the program and put it all together. And I worked with him beginning in 1988, and then in 1990 I promoted into the prevention division and stepped into that role and took over the management of the program. Why that's important on this collaborative idea is because we were seeing a lot of kids at that time. We had very aggressive marketing of our program, and we were seeing about 400 kids a year referred to our program. Now, to put that in context, the city of Portland isn't just a hotbed for kids and fire. It was, it's a city of about 600,000 people, about 100 square miles. We have about 30 stations. And we just were very aggressive about getting out there and letting our program be known. So it was an awful lot there. And as my exclusive job in public education was youth fire setting intervention. that's what I did. I mean, I go out and do other things, but that was my specific assignment to focus on. I didn't just see kids coming in the door. A big part of what I did was go out and interact and interface with child protective service workers, social workers, the mental health community, and just about schools, school counselors. We actually had child development specialists in all the elementary schools at that time. So it was, they were a great resource for really working with the kids that had problems and needed additional help, more so than the disciplinarians in our schools that would, even nowadays, sometimes get handed the task of dealing with difficult kids. So it really became a lot of collaboration with the community. And so by virtue of having all those cases and having that exclusivity on this topic, it taught me very quickly the value of having all these other groups. I remember being very concerned about the idea of going to the juvenile court and talking to them. I thought, man, I got my hands full already. You know, we're getting more than one referral a day, every single day of the year. And that was a big load. But I kind of came to the realization, well, they shouldn't know anything more than what we already have, because if we respond to the fire, our fire investigators take down the name, fill out the form, get it to me, we have a whole process that would go through that, then anything that ends up in the court I should already know about. And in fact, that ended up being true. But what it did was create a much better relationship with the court counselors and the diversion. We had excellent diversion programs where, you know, kids, unlike the FBI crime statistics, say that 50% of all arson arrests are kids. That wasn't really the case in our county because diversion programs were so robust that it was much more productive to get kids into diversion than to just put a charge on them and try to lock them up, which generally didn't work anyway. So anyway, collaboration was a very big deal. So the fire service is very collaborative. I want to start with that. Even though there's a lot of different disciplines within the fire service, we're generally pretty collaborative, but kind of sometimes not. And I think it's kind of the way we fancy ourselves. Think of a physician. You've got your primary care physician, right? They're kind of they do a little bit of everything. If something specific needs to be done, then you're referred to a specialist for this, that, and the other thing. Or you go to a dentist to have your teeth worked on. You go to an eye doctor for your eyes, and so on. But things kind of begin with that primary care physician who's a generalist. So the question is the fire service a generalist or a specialist? What do you think? Yes. Yes is actually a good answer. I kind of look at it this way. Is it a specialized team of generalists or a general team of specialists? I don't know that it matters, but as I started thinking about this way back last year before September, I have to remember why I thought of this, but this is kind of what occurred to me. And I think really it's a general team of specialists, because a child psychologist up in Massachusetts, a guy named David Wilcox, in an interview type thing for a program that was done, made a very astute comment, I think, about the fire service. He counsels kids with fire-setting behaviors, but his comment about the fire service is, I really like it because they're get-it-done kind of people. You know, they don't mess around. They take on something and they get it done. And I think that's very true. And as a team, firefighters go out and they're going to get it done no matter what. Almost sometimes to their own fault. Because in a fire, sure, charging ahead may be better most of the time. Sometimes it can get you in trouble. But in the field of youth fire setting, sometimes you have to proceed a little more gently and a little more thoughtfully at the bigger picture. In other words, collaboration, looking at what else needs to be involved. Because it's not an issue of penalizing someone. That doesn't necessarily solve the problem. You need to intervene and interrupt a pattern of behavior, and there's a number of different ways to do that. And sometimes just slapping somebody down or thinking they're going to get locked up by the justice system isn't necessarily going to do it. And a lot of times there's that idea, well, what are you going to say to that kid when they do that? But that comes especially with teenagers. What are you going to do with them? What are you going to say to them? Well, a lot of things, but a lot of times it's more, what are you going to listen to with them? We'll get into that in a little bit. So anyway, a specialized team, or a general team of specialists. So the fire service is there to handle anything, take on anything and everything. But look at the makeup of the fire service and what's in there. You've got, on the operations side, you've got people that work on engines or trucks or EMS or special rescue. They might work in training on a hazmat team, or they might be prevention specialists. I mean, we take a lot of pride in the segment of the operation that we take on that we do, that we're affiliated with. Our company number, our company location, all those things are a source of pride and actually, in many cases, competition between groups. For those that choose to specialize in prevention, you have inspectors and investigators, public educators, line firefighters sometimes do the work. But these specialties are all areas that are under this general umbrella of a group of people that want to help. You know, I think if you characterize the fire service, we want to get out there and help people. We want to help them get through the crisis, get past whatever it is, mitigate the problem, and set things right again, and then regroup and be ready for the next one. So these different roles are very important, and focusing on the specific issue of youth fire setting is very good, but it doesn't mean that all these other specialties don't have a place in it. It's easy to say, well, I'll refer that to the public educator that does that, or the inspector, or whoever. Or hopefully somebody from some counselor or school teacher or somebody will step up because I don't know what to do with this. Well, we all have a role in it. And if we understand that, it helps a lot. And again, I had somewhat of a crash course in that in Portland, seeing how it would work, because I had the luxury, and I will say luxury, of having the time dedicated to be able to get to know and work with all the other disciplines that are outside of the fire service as well. But we also created systems within the department that allowed us to provide clear rules for line firefighters when they encounter the behaviors, provide clear direction for investigators to contribute support to what they were doing in their investigation, yet direct kids into the program. Our program was set up under the Public Education Office rather than investigations or other places as some programs sometimes are. So I've prepared a case study that I'd like to share that I think, the names will be changed to protect the innocent and hidden the identity there, so if you think you know that, great. I don't want to violate anybody's hidden. This is a case that actually happened. Again, the names are changed to protect the innocent, but I think it really exemplifies the best case scenario in collaboration, not only between the different disciplines of the fire service, but also the community. So if you bear with me, I'd like to kind of walk you through this and share this case. So just to set the stage, Billy was a 5-year-old boy living in southeast Portland. He lived with his biological mother and her boyfriend. They made frequent moves around the region, so addresses and phone numbers were kind of fleeting for this particular family, as we would later find out. So on this particular day, the crew of one of our fire stations, Station 11, was at the grocery store doing their shopping, as they would every day, and they were approached in the store by a mother and her 5-year-old son, who happened to be Billy. Mom was concerned because Billy had an interest in fire. Mom had mentioned that they suffered a house fire in their last home, which was in a different community, and had recently relocated to Portland. So they came from a suburb, they had a fire, for whatever reason they decided to move to Portland, and were living in southeast Portland. So they came across Engine 11 this day and decided to talk to them. Now, at this time, I was the program manager of the program, but I had a cadre of line firefighters that went through special training to do intervention with kids who've been involved in fire setting. So the way our program was structured, any referrals would come into the program manager, myself. I would start a case file, I'd review the case, and if they looked like they were not too complicated, or the family had perhaps a transportation hardship or some other thing like that, that would make it difficult for them to get downtown to my office, then I might refer them out to one of these line firefighters who had special training to conduct the intervention. This officer happened to be one of those people, so he had a little higher level of knowledge as what we would call a specialist than the rest of the crew might have been. So he kind of looked at this from a different lens, and I think it was very appropriate. It was the first step in the right things happening with all of this. And again, I would just say, we never expected all of our firefighters out there to be specialists in this type of thing, any more than we expect them all to be paramedics unless they all go through the training, or hazmat technicians unless they go through the training, or fire inspectors unless they go through the training. To me, all of these things are technical specialties. I don't think education is a technical specialty. Youth fire-setting intervention is a technical specialty. It's not intended for everyone unless you're going to do a department-wide immersion into that level of thing. So just like any other tiered response, maybe you don't have paramedics on every grid, maybe you have paramedic units that respond, or a truck company that responds with a couple of engine companies. In Portland, we had 30 engine companies and 10 truck companies. So truck companies covered 1/10 of the city, where engine companies covered 1/3 of it. This was the kind of same tiered system. So this particular firefighter, he recognized that this was something that he needed to pay particular attention to, and talked a little more in depth with the mom about what was going on. So he recognized this was a pretty concerning level of behavior. That first of all, the kid had had a number of fire sets or involvements. He didn't get the total number at that time, but just from the discussion with mom, it seemed more than just a curiosity. And so he explained how the program would work, and then he filled out the referral form and sent it in to me and explained that I would be contacted. So he got all that going. So the next day, I got the information, and I called mom to set up an appointment. We got an appointment set up. And it was for like 2 days later or something like that. And the day came and they never showed up. Well, that's not uncommon, unfortunately. So I called back, didn't get an answer, called back, didn't get an answer. Called back at some point, left a message, a day or so later on the answering machine saying, hey, give me a call. And never heard back. Now the weekend rolls around, and the next week, I try again, I get a hold of a male on the phone, a man, and I assume it was her boyfriend. And I left a message. He assured me that she would call, and she never did. So I waited a couple more days expecting she would call. By now, we're getting close to the end of the next week, and I tried calling again, and the phone has been disconnected. So never did we get an address, now we didn't have a phone number. They didn't necessarily live close to the station or get any information. And so, again, this was not anything terribly unusual. This would happen once in a while. But the story of this fire setting was a little more significant than many would have been. So with nothing left to do, my default was always document very thoroughly. I kept very extensive notes on every attempt to call, that I left a message with some guy, assuming it was the husband, left a message on the answering machine. I would leave all this, the date, the time, and all of this very thoroughly, and many, many times that came back to pay dividends. So, that kind of ended things right there. About 5 weeks later, there was an apartment fire that occurred about a couple miles away from Station 11's quarters, and it was the home of this family, as it turns out. First arriving crews reported heavy fire and smoke on the ground floor apartment. A woman and a man had escaped, but a 5-year-old boy was reportedly still in the apartment. Crews made entry, narrowly saved the boy, and it turned out to be Billy. So Billy had ignited the fire in the living room of the apartment and then hid as the fire grew out of control. There were no working smoke alarms in the apartment. Yet Billy's mom and her boyfriend managed to escape. They just didn't take Billy with them. Billy suffered smoke inhalation and spent a brief period of time in the hospital. The first responding fire crew noticed what seemed to be a lack of concern from the mother for their 5-year-old son. And this was noticeable to them, that there's just seemed to be kind of a disconnect in concern. And I think that was a really brilliant observation that they made in their fire report and later passed on to me. And again, in this case, knowing it was a youth set fire, that created an automatic referral to the Youth Firesetting program, where I would get the fire report in a special form they would fill out with any particular notes. The fire investigator identified the living room as the room of origin, and they determined a lighter was used to start the fire. So all of this came together to identify Billy as being the igniter of the fire. While reviewing the entire apartment, they found drug paraphernalia, lighters, matches, and candles in multiple places throughout the apartment, and all were within easy reach of a child, a 5-year-old child. Now, you've got a family that knows their child has an interest in fire, has come forward looking for help for their kid involved and interested in fire, and basically thumbing their nose at the help that was offered to them about their kid with fire. So all of this begins to piece together a pretty significant picture of this. The first responding fire crew sent in the Youth Fire report, and the fire investigator also was concerned with what he saw and contacted me directly. Again, they might just make some notes in their fire report or send it on. But again, they took special notice of this and took extra steps because of it. When the American Red Cross responded to provide relief for the displaced families in some of the surrounding apartments, they too were concerned about the behavior of Billy's mom and boyfriend. So again, a great observation. The Red Cross, of course, responds and provides relief for a lot of fires, so they see a lot of different situations. And something about this stood out in their mind, and they actually made a report to Child Protective Services, which is, I would say a bit unusual, but very appropriate in this case. The fire was reported in the newspaper, and this caught the attention of the neighboring fire department, where the family had lived before. They recognized the family as being the one that experienced the child set fire in that community a few months before, and they also contacted me to tell me about that, and they offered to send a fire report. So now, I got a desk full of paper, it lands on my desk, all of it about this one situation. So when I got all of this, it kind of rung a bell, and I went to the filing cabinet, and there's that 5-week-old file in there on this mom and Billy, and a nice, clear record of their lack of participation in the program that was offered to them. So basically what it showed was a very neglectful parent of a dangerous situation. And I think what the real lesson to fire service professionals here is you are a strong voice in saying that is dangerous. I mean, if you see a kid running around in the street with a loaded gun, what are you going to do? Are you going to go, kids will be kids, they do that stuff, I don't want to screw up a family's life? That's a dangerous situation. Or if it's a young child we're getting into the street routinely in your neighborhood, and you kept seeing it, wouldn't you think, wow, those parents aren't doing a very good job of taking care of this child. They're allowing them to engage in a dangerous behavior, something dangerous to that child. But when a kid is involved in fire-setting behavior, that's not only a danger to themselves, it's a danger to their family, it's a danger to the community. And when I say community, what I mean is the fire engine shows up to the fire and the people that have to go in. Firefighters die in child-set fires. So there's really nothing acceptable about that. It is a neglectful behavior on the part of an adult. It's no different than letting a child engage in other dangerous behaviors that would be unsafe to the child, the family, or the community. So it should come as no shock that a good tactic would be to make a referral to something like Child Protective Services to say something is missing. Because it doesn't mean, believe it or not, you really should get to know your Child Protective Services in your community. It doesn't mean the long arm of the law is going to reach out and snatch that child away, but it does mean that they have just reason to review a situation and begin to look at the circumstances and make appropriate decisions on whether or not these parents are suitable and fit to be caring for this child. So all of this was batched up, and it all went into the district attorney's office, and they actually filed felony charges of criminal mistreatment 1 is what it was labeled as, which is a felony. So the mom and boyfriend were charged, and I think it was primarily the mom, charged with criminal mistreatment, and it went to grand jury. Now that's a scary thing. I got called into grand jury, and this was my first situation with that. And I thought, oh gosh, what's it going to be? So I took my pile of notes and went in. And it's just a bunch of people sitting around a table asking questions about what happened. And with all of the documentation that I had, with the assistance of all the other community partners, from the fire company that had the first conversation with them, to the fire company that responded to the situation, to the fire investigator that investigated, to the Red Cross, and to the voice of neighbors, and the prior discussions with Child Protective Services, all of that made for a very easy story to tell. There was no muss, no fuss, no pressure, no liability, nothing scary about it at all. I just went in and told my story, and they did what they saw was appropriate to deal with the situation of parental neglect. Now, at the end of the day, it was a plea bargain down to criminal mistreatment 2, which was still a felony. Mom lost custody, at least for a time. The child was placed in therapeutic foster care. Mom and boyfriend were remanded to drug treatment, which says that there was, probably part of the problem was drugs and other such things. And most remarkably, so this kid goes to a therapeutic foster home, and I met with them, talked with them a little bit about the issues, and kind of connected with them over the next 6 or 8 months. He never set another fire. I have no interest in it. So what does that tell you about the situation that this child was in? Fire setting is an interesting thing in that it's driven by something. Sometimes it's lack of information, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, or sometimes just parental example. Kids are great imitators, and if they see an adult firing something up and holding it within inches of their face 15 times a day and making it look like it's pretty trivial, that's what they're going to think of it. But there's also the situations where kids are crying out. They're communicating. Behavior is communication. From the day we're born, if we're cold-blooded hungry, it's what we do when we're a little baby. We cry. We behave in a way that brings attention to us so we can get our needs met. Does that ever go away? I don't mean to be a wet, cold, or hungry. Okay. If we're having a bad day, what do? We drop our head, we slump our shoulders, we scuff our feet, and we kind of hope maybe one of our coworkers or friends or family will say, geez, you look down, what's wrong? You want to talk about it. The trouble with kids and fire is a lot of times kids don't have the words to put to it. They don't have the ability to articulate their feelings, their stress, their crisis, or their other circumstances. They use behavior to get their needs met. And that doesn't seem intuitive of a 13, 14, 15-year-old, but it's just as true for them as it is for young kids. It's just as true for adults. Adult fire-setting behavior, I would contend, is not that much different from kids. They just have a greater sophistication in the ability to conceal it up to a point, but the driving factors are still the same. And that's generally stress, crisis, or dysfunction in their life or the life surrounding them. I've seen kids that didn't have as much stress or crisis as their family did, but they had to be the adult. Imagine an 11-year-old kid that has to be the grown-up in the house. You think that's not stressful? So these are the kind of things that, that drive the behavior. And so it isn't a fire problem. It isn't our problem as a fire service. It's a community problem. And the more we can connect into the other resources in the community, the more help we get. So what do you do with these kids? Well, they're going to go back to school. Let's say a kid sets a fire in school. School doesn't want them there, right? Well, they can't keep them out of school forever. They've got to go to some school. They're going to go back somewhere. So who is the best person to monitor that kid moving forward? We've probably already established who the parents are the best, or at least not until they get some more training or wherewithal or capacity. So who are kids going to see each and every day? The school. So how do you cultivate those resources in the school so they can feel comfortable accepting this kid back into school and completing the circle of understanding what they are, what they need, what to look for, what to be concerned about? Because many times, and again, I can give you examples of stories where kids were fantastic in school because there's structure, there's discipline, there's support from nurturing adults. And when they act out, they do it at home because there isn't support, there isn't structure, there isn't nurturing. There's a toxic home environment that drives the behavior. And that's where you find it. So those things are all clues about fire-setting behavior. So these collaborations, if you will, are all very, very important. And they go a long way to making these cases work out. So on Billy's behalf, we had a whole host of different helpers along the way who came forward and were part of the solution. It would have been easy for me to ignore that and just say, well, he's a bad kid. We need to get him out of there. He needs to be whatever. I don't know. What am I going to say to him? Well, first thing, he needed to be in a safe, productive, and nurturing environment. When he was, first of all, the fire setting went away. Doesn't mean that all of his problems went away. But that was certainly a start, and it made him safer to be able to work with. It seems like it calmed the crisis, and then from there were different services in place, and of course part of the services are to try to reassemble the family. The state of Oregon, I can guarantee you, didn't want to take families apart. It was the last resort. I had a situation where a little girl went as far as severely burning her infant sister in a fire, and it still took 6 months to get those children removed from the parent who was abusive of the children. It wasn't an easy thing to do. But I stuck with the idea that these kids were in a dangerous environment and they needed the support. And I never felt bad about it. When you look at this, I think the basic premise is every child deserves an advocate, right? And that advocate should be their parent. For most of you, I'm sure that's your strategy. If you have kids, how many do you have kids? Okay, so you're all experts, first of all, as expert as you can be. And you're the advocate for your child. But when a child doesn't have a parent that's an advocate, who's going to be that? Well, I look at it as if I stumble across this situation, I'm going to be that advocate until I can put them in the hands of an adequate long-term advocate. But if it means stepping up at that moment and calling in the authorities to remove a child from the family, is not being their advocate, I'm not going to feel bad about that. I had to do it several times. It's not easy. It's not a smooth decision. But if you think about why are you there, you're there to provide a safe and nurturing environment for the child because someone else isn't. You can't just have a 5, a 10, a 2-year-old just wallowing in nothing with nothing working on their behalf. So I think this whole list, these are all people in this case that were willing to step up and advocate. They were willing to step up on behalf of this kid and make a statement, take an action, make a report, and that was all good. And I can say this is kind of the perfect storm. Everything fell into place perfectly to create a documentation trail that was flawless. It doesn't always happen that way. But part of that is getting to know the different services, knowing your juvenile court, knowing your child protective services, having a procedure inside your department, having a hierarchy of how these things move through. Think about other things that you might run across through your agency. That it's not just, well, good luck handling that new guy. I don't want to deal with it. You take care of it. These things, these are not lightweight problems. And we shouldn't look at them that way or just expect them to sort themselves out. The fire service is all about preparation, training, development of skills, certifications. This is no different. This is not just something that anybody or everybody can do. It has to be something that's cultivated. And like I say, it doesn't even, just because I have the luxury of doing it full time doesn't mean every department has to do that. Does anybody have a full-time whitewater rescue team that's staffed all the time, ready to go? Or when that water comes rushing through town, the rest of the time they're just kind of sitting around doing nothing but waiting? You have specialty teams that are mobilized when the circumstance comes about. But in the meantime, they're given special tools, special training, support, sometimes even pay to be prepared when the situation comes up. That sounds like a pretty good model. Because I get it, not every community has 400 referrals a year. In fact, we didn't know for years it dropped off. But then you might say, well, we don't have that many at all, really. So there's a couple ways around that. One is a community coalition, maybe different counties. We had a coalition of 3 counties in the metro area that worked together. We would develop trainings and support each other in cases and how we would handle them and things, because 3 counties make up the Portland metro area, to the tune of about 1.5 million people. And that's where all the big fire departments are. So that's one way you might look at it. There's different things you can do, and then you can trade off intervention. It's like a crazy thing. Nobody in the fire service will get this, but it's known as mutual aid. You ever heard of that? Those kind of things work together. But there probably is more out there than you think. And I'll just take from a study they did in Rochester, New York. Many of you know Paul Schwartzman and Bob Cole, some guys that really were some of the early pioneers of intervention services in the Rochester, New York area. They actually did a survey of 880 kids in their community from kindergarten through 8th grade. And they asked about their experience with fire use or misuse. Younger kids they talked to directly, older kids they did paper surveys, but they put all this together. And what was interesting about it for me in particular was Rochester, New York was about exactly half of what Portland was. Half the population. Their program saw about the same number of kids by half. I mean, proportionally it was very same. Their intervention was very much the same. And so I always found them to be a very good comparable program, because there weren't many back in the early 90s that we could compare to. And so I paid real close attention to the things they did, because they were just very, very good. And what they found in interviewing these 880 kids, based on the program that they had in their community, how many kids they were seeing, how many child set fires were going on in the community, and they had a good handle on all those stats. Their program was seeing 1 out of every 10 kids that was misusing fire in the community. 1 out of every 10. Well, for a community, and that's an active program in the community. They're doing outreach. They're working with schools. They're working with child protective service workers and caseworkers and such, social workers. And they're seeing 1 in 10. What about the community that does no outreach? That doesn't interact with those? How many have they seen? 1 out of 20? 1 out of 30? Because here's a remarkable thing that happens when a community starts a youth fire setting intervention program. The problem gets worse right away. And people go, oh man, now you've talked about it, and now kids are setting fires because you let them open your mouth and talk about it. That's not it at all. It's about awareness of the problem. They were seeing 1 out of 30 before, and now they're seeing 1 out of 20. Or 1 out of 15. They didn't make the problem worse. They raised awareness so that more knowledge is there. What if in all fires, what if in all kitchen fires, you only knew of 1 out of every 20 in your neighborhood or in your community? How effective could you be? Let's use school fires as an example. Schools are notorious for not reporting fires, right? Yeah. How many do you think there really are? And who do you think is setting those? A janitor? Principal? It's kids. So of all the places, and how do they not know that without reporting a problem, you can't help them, you can't dedicate resources? So I'm going to go all the way back to the data. This morning we heard all this stuff about data, and I'm over here going, man, yeah, data. I'll just say, and I think it's been lovingly put when it's been said, but I've been called the data nerd. And there's something to that. I like this stuff. I always felt like providing intervention for all these kids was just getting in the way of me gathering data and writing reports, which is what I kind of like to do. But you got to get there somehow. But when I first began the program, about a month after I sat down in the chair and started doing the job, the first computer in the prevention division was dropped in my lap, along with the software to create a database. And so I became interested right away, because my big question was, what is there about this issue? I want to know what it's about so I can develop some strategies to deal with it. I don't even know what I don't know. And there really wasn't much aside from Rochester, New York. And so that really drove me to create our own information as as kind of a starting point. So we fast forward to today, and one of the things I'm involved with, I retired from Portland back in 2011, and so now I do stuff like this when I'm invited, or consulting work and just other projects, various things. I've worked with Vision 2020 and and some other projects like that. But one of the things that I've done is help develop a national youth fire setting data system. So back in about 2000, I don't know, it was about 2011, the International Association of Firefighters, for whatever reason, I've never really quite wrapped my head around this, why they decided to take on a prevention effort. I don't want to sound disparaging about that, but it just struck me as very unusual because it wasn't real typical. But they actually applied for a Fire Act grant, in fact 3 of them over 5 years, to fund this project to develop this data system. But we started out with simply a hypothesis that youth set fires weren't being well reported. And that took us right back to NFIRS. So why doesn't NFIRS give us the information we need? Well, there's a lot of reasons. First of all, the system, as we've already heard, is massively wide. To take America's example, it's got breadth. It's got depth. I mean, it's almost too much. First of all, to get a child set fire in there, you have to go into the basic data set, and then you have to diverse into the arson module. Now, I will tell you, every kid that sets a fire does not commit arson. Not even close. If you're using arson statistics to define the youth fire setting problem in your community, you are missing out on the majority of child set fires, because most of them aren't arson. First of all, you have to be of an age that qualifies. You have to have intent, right? And technically, you have to set something on fire with monetary damage. That's generally the criteria for arson in most places. In Oregon, the age of culpability is 12. So only 28% of the cases that we had in Portland were over age 12. So when you say, the FBI statistics say 50% of kids who are arrested, or people that are arrested for arson, are 18 and under. Not in Oregon, not by a long shot, maybe 5%. Very few were actually arrested, again, because of robust diversion programs. So anyway, where was I? Anyway, some stats here. So the information in NFIRS really was missing the boat. And I'll get to something specific about that. So that was the premise behind developing Y-Fires. It's like, we're not capturing it all. Now, Y-Fires was not developed in an effort to be quantitative. In other words, to account for every child set fire in the nation. It's more qualitative. What we wanted to do was learn more about fire setting behavior so that we could develop better interventions and better intervention programs. And so we first did, the first grant was a feasibility study, and we found that yeah, it is underreported. And 2 states stepped up with evidence to that, Iowa and Minnesota, both of which, in their normal reporting, found youth fire setting behavior to be about 12th or 13th in order of most common means of fire starting. When they went back and hand counted their fire reports to find the ones that were mischaracterized, or the right box wasn't checked, or the right thing wasn't done, in both states, that problem moved up to number 3, not number 12 or number 13. 2 states did that. So that was further evidence that this was being very underreported. Let me come back to this in just a sec. If you look at this, so again, Y-Fires is a data system. It has about 160 data elements in it of information to gather. Although users don't have to fill out 160 data elements. They can fill out 1 if they want. Any one they want. There's no minimum requirement. However, there are 20 data elements in it that if you have a complete data set, that can be forwarded to the national repository to be put into the bigger picture of youth fire setting across our nation. And at this point, we have about 320 participating programs in 47 states plus the District of Columbia, with about 700 users in the system and about 3,000 cases. And so those that contribute into the national repository, they're all kind of compared to one another. We can slice and dice in different ways. The reason we only let it be submitted if there's a complete data set. What's the biggest problem with data in NFIRS, as we saw? Undetermined, unknown, this, that. We didn't want that. So we'd rather have a smaller data set that's quality than have a bigger data set where most of it is undetermined or unknown. So this information goes into that system. Now we knew we weren't going to talk to people like you and say, hey, just do this for us, because we're all good people working hard. We just want you to gather 20 data elements and send them to us. You know, that'd be fine. You do it about 5 times and go, I got better things to do. So we made Wi-Fiers a case management system. It's like an electronic filing cabinet. Every piece of information you could ever possibly gather on a child, name, address, phone number, you can put in a picture, a fire report, intervention forms, everything can attach to this and go up into the cloud and be securely stored, just like bank records or anything else. And that is the give back to users. They can use that for their system. They don't have to submit anything. But if they do, then they're part of the bigger picture. So we knew that in order to get something from people, we had to give them something useful in return. A lot of data projects don't necessarily do that. So we tried to do that too. So we've begun crunching the numbers. This year we're going to try to really dig into it. But a couple of things really stood out. And again, relative to NFIRS. So on those, on the cases that are, I guess it's not even the ones that are submitted, all cases, we asked the question, did this case get submitted to NFIRS? Now let me just back up a sec, because another important thing about Wi-Fiers is it's not exclusive for the fire service. A mental health provider that provides intervention in fire can be a part of it. Hospital, a nonprofit, all those different things. In fact, 18% of the users on Wi-Fiers, 18% of the programs are not fire service. NFIRS, only the fire service can enter. Well, in our real world, it's not just the fire service managing these fire setting programs. And that's evidenced by 18% being other types of organizations. So, that accounts for some of this. So when we look at this, was the incident that's put into the system entered into NFIRS? About a third of the time the answer is yes. Okay? And that's fine, because not every time a kid sets a fire does it have to be accompanied by a fire report. A parent can call up and say, my kid's lighting matches all over the place, hasn't set anything on fire, can you see them in this program? Most programs will say yes, and we will work with them and try to diffuse that behavior. About a third of the time, the answer to that question is no, it wasn't submitted, which again would account for maybe that, or maybe it's a school counselor that's heading up a program, or a nonprofit, and they don't have to enter into NFIRS, but you would think they would have a fire service partner in this collaboration that would probably serve both the best, you would think. And then a third of the time, the answer is unknown. They don't know. How do they not know? How do they not know? So what this tells us is, between 33 and 66% of the time, somewhere, certainly no more than 66% of the time, but maybe as low as 33%, NFIRS doesn't get this information. To me, that's clear evidence right there, along with some other supporting things that we found as we explored our hypothesis, that NFIRS is woefully short of the correct information, data, statistics on youth fire setting behavior. There's a lot more of it out there. Maybe we're only seeing 1 in 10, 1 in 20, 1 in 30. And I would suggest that may well be the case in your community. Because if you don't tell people you have a program, why would they come knocking on your door unless it was a really drastic situation? In fact, the interesting thing about Portland's program, let me just back up here. I guess I don't, you have a handout from me in your folder, and on one side it's got some graphs like this, and on the other side it has my name at the top, and it looks kind of like this, if you can see it. So if you look at the age range, here, you'll see that it's really highest from 11 to 14. And again, this goes back to something that Meredith shared about who needs best to use your information. Well, if you only have so much time and so many resources to reach out to the community, and you want to make the biggest impact possible, who might the highest risk audience be? It might be those that are setting fires or misusing fire. If you just go to the preschools and early elementary schools thinking, well, let's get them there, that's an idea. But if you look at this graph and want to believe what it says, you really need to be looking at middle and high school. The interesting thing is most of our youth education programs cut off when they get out of elementary school. What are we going to tell middle schoolers? They don't want to listen to anything anyway. You'd be surprised. If you give the right approach, the right delivery, they'll listen to a lot. Sometimes it's more a matter of listening to them than expecting them to listen to you. We just recently, with Vision 2020, did an interesting project with a high school. We actually worked with a graphic arts class to have them develop safety messages and posters. And the stuff they came up with was amazing. We didn't tell them what to do. We expected them to go research and come up with what they felt like their audience needed to hear. And the results were amazing, and their enthusiasm was amazing. Because we weren't trying to tell them what we wanted them to know. We were saying, you tell us what we need to know. And that was really the idea behind it. It's amazing the difference that could make. Just back to our, just looking at this chart here, and this is on your handout as well. But as far as referrals into these 3,000 cases that are in wildfires, this is what the breakdown looks like. About half come from the fire service. A good chunk come from the families directly, which is fine. You know, anytime a family makes a referral, that's better than a fire engine showing up at their house to have to deal with the issue. The more proactive you can be, the younger you can get to a child when they first begin the behavior, the easier it is to interrupt that pattern of behavior before it becomes a very repetitive pattern. What I was going to say earlier is I was pretty proud in Portland because our average kids were in the 7, 8, 9 range. Because we really tried to strive to reach out to parents to get them to refer kids in at the earliest opportunity, not after several things had gone wrong along the way, which I think accounted for why we had so many referrals, just heading those things off, because many of them, most of them, 2/3, 3/4, were those curious kids, not those kids with significant troubles. And it's a lot easier to interrupt the pattern of behavior at that point than it is to wait longer. But you can see all the different referral sources that come into a program, where they come from, if your door is open to those organizations, if they know that you have an effort and a willingness to help them and work with them, or to provide interventions. You might just be the educational component. You might find a mental health provider that can do a better job of doing an evaluation of behaviors, a screening, if you will. There's all kinds of things out there to do it. There's all kinds of different ways to approach it, and I'm not intending to try to even get into that here today. But if you're serious about beginning a program, again, it doesn't take a person doing it full time. It just takes a dedicated effort of having the right people with the right tools in the right way, just like any other technical specialty you might develop in your department. And if it's looked at that way, I think there's a better opportunity for it to be supported. So really, we just all need to work together. Cats and dogs living in harmony, you know, hugging on a sunny morning, all that kind of stuff. It's enough to bring a tear to your eye. Let me check my other notes here for just a second. Because it's really been good being here all day, because hearing some of these other things that it really does connect the dots. I enjoy it when a day of learning like this, many different things all tie together. It really makes it more cohesive. It always did in my mind, and I'm glad I was here to hear these concerns and these issues about data, this discussion about NFIRS and what it is and what it isn't. Again, I want to go back and take a little sip from Meredith here when the data that she showed said heating and cooking cause more deaths than kids playing fire. Again, I would challenge that idea just because the data is so poorly assembled from NFIRS if that's the source of that. The biggest thing that's reduced youth fire play at young age is the child-resistant lighter legislation that went into effect in 1995. That made a significant change. There are some things that are better engineered solutions like that, and there are some things that are better educated solutions. But all the talking to young kids in the world, what didn't make as big a difference as engineering that device to behave differently in the hands of a child. That made a huge difference, a documentable difference. So I think that is what I wanted to cover. Any questions? Questions before we move on to the next deal?
What can agencies get from the Wi-Fi's process from a standpoint of data recovery or analysis?
Well, you can do a lot of your own. There's built-in reports to it. So YFires.com, it's Youth Fire Information Reporting and Evaluation System is what YFire stands for. It's just YFires.com. The website has all kinds of information about what the program is, what it's doing, how it was developed. You can sign on as create a program. Whoever creates the program is the program administrator, and they become the gatekeeper for that program. Once it's established and approved, then it can, that program administrator can then load more people in as users under them in a hierarchy, kind of a pyramidal hierarchy of other people that can put in data and work on cases. So the idea behind it is you could add in a couple of people in your department that are going to do intervention, somebody at juvenile court, and maybe a mental health professional that you normally work with that maybe specializes in youth fire setting behavior. So you as the program manager, you get this intake on a case like Billy, you call up your person over at juvenile court and say, hey, I got this case, I got these concerns, it's case number such and such. They're one of your data or program users. They can log into the system. You don't have to send them paperwork. It's all in there. You put in everything you know. They work with family. They add to that. The person over here, adds more to it, and everybody works together, and never does a piece of paper have to be mailed between or emailed or faxed or anything else. So it offers a lot of opportunity like that. You've got to be thoughtful how you set it up. For example, Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, a representative of the State Fire Marshal's office is the program administrator, and every program they have in every department is a program user. Well, that works good for them, except every program has access to every case in the entire state system, everybody that's made a part of it. That may or may not be desirable. They had a hospital, a treatment hospital there that wants to be a part of it, but they can't allow their cases to be seen by that many places. So they're going to have to be something separate under that or alongside of it in the state of Minnesota. So there's different ways that it can be set up and used, and I'm always happy to talk to people about that. And my contact would be through the website there or through this as well. So it's a system that offers a lot, and more than anything, it helps support collaboration, which is why it's kind of fitting to talk about it here. I'm not trying to promote it or talk about it, but it is a great tool because it really brings community resources together to work together better and gives them a great platform to do that. Any other questions? Well, I thank you for your attention. I especially thank you for the invitation to be here today. It's always great to come in and hear the perspective of so many different people and just be able to mix in. So it's I enjoy sharing what I have to share, but more than anything, I enjoy being able to learn from all of you and hear all the things that you have to offer. So thank you so much.
Anytime.